Hello, I'm Ethan Odell, and for my Water Resources Issues project, I chose the Louisiana Coast Flooding. Always on Edge is kind of the title I've made this presentation because this describes the lives and mindsets for the people and families living on the coast of Louisiana. Because every time it rains, they must make sure a canoe with a life jackets inside are tied to their front porch. They also have to make sure that any important documents and photos are sealed in plastic bags just every time it rains. What we'll be discussing through this presentation is kind of the causings of coastal flooding, and then we'll go through some statistics. And like Louisiana is the coast that faces the highest rate of sea level anywhere in the world. So we'll discuss some statistics of the coast flooding. We'll also look at the different viewpoints between the citizens and the state, and then some project plans implemented for restoration of the coast, and then also the future of the coastline. Some of the causes of the coastline, there's three main causes, and they kind of amplify each other. And the first one is levee construction, and then oil and gas exploration, and then sea level rise. When levees are constructed, they can be a good thing because they can hold in water and stop a lot of erosion, but whenever they break, it creates disasters. And this also doesn't let the Mississippi go back into the delta and replenish the land. Oil and gas companies and their drilling are a huge cause of erosion, and this is where a lot of degrading takes place. According to PRI.org, a lot of the canals and pits that they cause aren't properly filled. Global warming is huge for sea level rise, and they go hand in hand, and this is actually the highest anywhere in the world, according to the lens. The impacts of storms and hurricanes are huge for eroding the land and the wetlands of Louisiana. These destroy marshes, and after Hurricane Katrina, 40% of the people moved away and never came back, and this is according to NPR.org. Some statistics aligned with coastal flooding. The coast is disappearing at a rate of a football field per hour, and this equals about 16 square miles per year. According to the lens, the southwest corner of Louisiana will be 4.3 feet underwater at the end of the century. Rates are up to 11.2 millimeters in rising sea level, and even a half inch a year. And this will result in 3 feet rise in the next 100 years. According to the Pacific Standard, it would cost about $50 to $100 billion to stop and replenish the coastal flooding. So next I'm going to talk about some different viewpoints when it comes to Louisiana, the state of Louisiana, and the coastal flooding that goes on there. I'm going to start off with the citizens' view, and they believe that the state should be paying for the reconstruction of these coastal lands, and the state should also be paying for the relocation of the citizens living on the coast. Many civilians do not want to move though, which is a big problem. They believe that it destroys and harms their everyday living, and they're worried about floods every time it rains. Many families don't have the money to move. A lot of poverty goes on in Louisiana, especially near the coast, and this is where they've lived their entire life, and they're used to only this lifestyle, and this living on the coast of Louisiana is what they're used to. They don't think that the state or federal government is doing enough, and these sources all came from interviews of families on NPR.org. The next view I'm going to talk about is the state's view, and their view is a little bit different. The state has a view about how many resources and money and what they should use that for, and they are looking at the marginal benefits and trying to increase the marginal benefits and make sure they don't waste all their money restoring the wetland if it's not going to work. And they don't want to spend all their money as well on moving people away from the coast, because no one will be able to take care of that part of the cities and towns when they all move. The state encouraged families to just move, though. A lot of them just move a little bit off the coast and relocate somewhere else. And many states, or many parts of the state, are actually paying people to move and relocate. The state also believes that oil and gas companies should pay a large amount for the cost of these projects. They also owe millions from the Clean Water Act and the huge oil spill in the Gulf. And the state continues to reach out to the president to pass permits for restoration, but they keep getting prolonged, and they believe the federal government should be doing more. The last thing is that they encourage families to make their houses resilient to these storms and hurricanes that come to Louisiana almost every year. Some project plans that are set in place. There's actually over 100 project plans that the state or government, federal government, has put in place to stop these eroding wetlands. Head of State Coastal Planning and Protection Authority incorporates the worst case scenarios when planning these projects. And he said he has to update their plans every 5 years according to the lens, because of how many changes and how rapid the coastline is changing. The Coastal Master Plan is kind of the main plan that's been talked about for about a decade now, and it's made, the newest version was made 3 years ago. And this will restore, build, maintain coastal wetlands, and will reduce the flooding on these lands as well. The Mid-Barataria Sediment Diversion Project, and this is actually a 600 feet wide and 30 feet deep kind of hole and canal they will make, and they will pump water into the Barataria Bay at about 75,000 cubic feet per second. And this is the plan that the New Yorker, covered over some different project plans to restore and help the coastline of Louisiana. Future of the coastline is very unpredictable. If nothing huge happens, the rising will continue, and for more and more people, this could cause them to move. This could cause the state and federal government millions of dollars to just buy out these homes for people to move. And these projects were described, many of these projects that were described may take up to a decade or two to complete, but many smaller projects have been completed and have been effective. And there's no slowing of global warming, sea level rise, or storms, or oil drilling. So all these are affecting this coast, which kind of creates a huge problem for the people and the state. The federal government continues to make more restrictions for drilling near land for these oil and gas companies, and hopefully this will slow down the erosion process. But the future is really unpredictable for these citizens living on the coast. Conclusion of this presentation is we talked about kind of the main causes that caused the coastal floodings and all the erosion of the land. We talked about the statistics, and such as the climate change and how much land Louisiana is really losing. And southeast Louisiana has lost about 2,000 square miles since 1930. That's a staggering amount. We also talked about different viewpoints and how they're kind of colliding with each other towards the citizens and the state, and even kind of how the federal government is all tied in as well. We also discussed some project plans and how they're kind of being prolonged and not much is being done. And then we also finally talked about the future and how it's unpredictable for these people, for these communities of South Louisiana. And for now, they're going to have to keep tying a canoe to their porch every time it rains. And and these are my citations. Thank you.